So if you're interested in understanding transfer values and what impact that's likely to have on the team, this is the site that I use, Transfer Markt. Markt is German for market, and there is a .com site which is priced in euros, so I'm guessing the original site was based in Germany. But the good thing about this site is it contains information and news on the latest transfers, rumours, and information that's coming through from the individual market. So it's a really useful resource for all of those things. But if we go to the market values area, we can actually have a look at the value that they're placing on individual players within the league. So these are sort of hypothetical values if the player were to be sold. So you're seeing that they're saying they reckon Mo Salah is worth 135 million. That would be some deal, that would. But they're basically pinning values on this, but they also do monitor how much is spent from each individual club. So you can look at transfers by clubs, and that will give you an overview of basically who's coming in and out and how much have been paid for it, and that will give you a steer on what you expect to see within the individual clubs. So if we look at Man City here, for example, you can see their net spend is 63 million. And if we look at the amount of players that have gone out, they've spent out 63 million, they've had 16 million in, which means that they've spent a net 46 million. If you look at Man United, you can see they've spent a bit of money on individual players, but probably not an enormous amount in comparison to others. Look at Spurs. I mean, it's just complete silence. It's amazing. And then look at Liverpool, 164 million. It's just a ridiculous amount of money. Chelsea have spent a bit, but not a huge amount. Arsenal, you can see, have spent a bit as well. When we look at the net spend, it's quite high as well. Burnley, haven't really splashed out that much. Everton have continued to spend, but not probably as much as prior years. If we go down, I'm just looking for a few better examples here. So you can see Newcastle haven't really spent that heavily. So Rafa Benitez has been complaining about that, and their net activity is actually positive. So they've actually, they haven't spent any money at all. They're net up on the deal. Palace haven't spent hardly any money at all. Bournemouth has spent quite a bit. West Ham has spent a lot. But can you see we're beginning to build a picture here in terms of the net activity? So Watford have generated more fees than they've spent. Brighton, and we can just go on and go on down each one of these individual numbers down here. So if we look at how much Wolves have spent, can you see they've spent 63 million? So that's a pretty substantial amount of money for a newly promoted club. And look at Cardiff, they've spent a little bit, but not enormous amounts of money. And then we look at Fulham, have expended a lot of money as well. So can you see that you begin to get a little bit of a pattern? So this gives you a good overview of what's going on within each individual club. But a good way of looking at this is to do it from an overview by looking at the individual club values. This will give you a clue as to what the league is likely to look like as we approach the end of the year. Now, of course, it's an imprecise science, but this gives you a good indication. So you can see here that Man City have a current value that their team is worth about £1 billion. And then if we go all the way down to Cardiff City, you can see that's worth slightly less. So that's why you see Cardiff City at the bottom. And my guess is if we look at the Premier League relegation market, you will find that Cardiff City are the favourites to go down and that Man City are the favourites to win. I think that makes a lot of sense. But it will be roughly ordered in this manner. So it'll be Cardiff, Huddersfield. I mean, you've got a mixture of teams here at around the same sort of level. So Bournemouth, Wolverhampton, Watford, Newcastle, Brighton, Fulham. Can you see there's not much between them here? There's not a huge amount. Maybe Wolverhampton, Bournemouth will probably be around the same price. I think in terms of relegation, maybe Bournemouth slightly lower because they have no momentum. But can you see we're beginning to get a bit of a picture in terms of what's likely to happen? So Cardiff are way off the pace here, so you would bet they would be odds on for relegation. Huddersfield are a bit off the pace, and then this is where it gets more complicated, because you're sort of saying the likelihood of some of these teams getting into trouble is quite high. However, once you get above this level, so can you see there's a massive gap here between Southampton and Leicester, so Leicester upwards are probably pretty safe. You'd be surprised if those teams would get into trouble. It does happen, however, it does happen. But can you see what we're looking at here? We're basically saying these are the values of the teams. It's not net transfer spend we're looking at here. This is the valuation that this site has put on it. But nonetheless, it's a reasonable guide in terms of the strength of individual teams.